It seems like today we can't get away from superhero stories. This isn't only obvious when going to the theater, but at this point superhero culture has spread into many parts of our daily lives. There's no denying superhero films are extremely popular. In this video, I'd like to specifically talk about the superhero films existing in the DC and Marvel universes, as those are the ones seeing the most success at this point in time. In fact, these films are so successful, Box Office Mojo claims in 2017 alone, the 8 superhero films released made a combined amount of $700 million during their opening week in theaters. This definitely isn't a bad amount, and it proves people are still drawn to theaters to see superhero movies. But once this amount is compared to the previous years, like the $1.5 billion made on the 7 superhero films released in 2016, or the approximately $500 million made on the only 5 superhero films released in 2012, it's obvious that while the earnings from 2017's movies were successful, the amount isn't all that impressive. Looking at it this way, you can see audiences are becoming less and less interested in the superhero films with every year that passes. This brings me to the point I'd like to argue in this video, which is that unless the superhero genre can change its approach to storytelling, its chances of remaining popular are slim. To start out, I'd like to clarify I think the superhero genre is awesome. I think people like myself will always be able to enjoy these films, but when it comes to an average movie viewer, it's just too specific of a genre to have that long of a successful lifespan, especially with the amount of exposure it's currently getting. I have to commend the creators of modern superhero films, however, because the genre has been front and center pretty much since the release of the first Iron Man in 2008. Before that, it was unheard of for a storyline, such as the one seen in today's Marvel story arc, to last as long as it has. In fact, at this point in time, Marvel has released 17 different films, all existing in the same universe. So it's really no surprise that the movies don't offer much variance. Even so, after watching all of these films many different times, I have a hard time wrapping my head around why all these stories told in the superhero universe are so similar. I'd like to clarify what I mean by this. Obviously, the movies each have their own unique qualities, but when it comes to the actual storytelling aspect of the films, they all pretty much boil down to the same things. The story usually starts out with a guy who gains superpowers. Whether this be because of an alteration to their genetic makeup, or they receive some sort of training in a unique form of combat by a wise old mentor, these powers are usually granted to someone who doesn't exactly know what he's getting himself into. After receiving the powers, our new superhero usually starts out solving small crimes, but eventually, after a bit of ponderance over whether or not they are really deserving of this responsibility, our superhero pulls himself together just in time to save the world from the plot of an especially evil villain. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? The problem with Marvel and DC having such a huge monopoly on the superhero genre is that it leaves little room for ingenuity. Because there's barely any competition, these franchises can get away with recycling the same old ideas with no one but adoring audiences to keep them in check. Some may argue that this isn't the case, and that the superhero genre is becoming more varied in the stories it's telling. And while it's true there has definitely been steps in the right direction, the approach to the storytelling of today's superhero films hasn't been progressing at a rate that can keep up with the film consumers' desires for fresh new material. I think this problem is caused by one specific reason, which is that today's superhero films are still telling the stories the United States needed to be hearing in 2008. To clarify, I'd like to share an idea expressed by the New York Film Academy's website. The author argues that the most significant factor behind the rise of superhero movies was a direct result of the economic downturn of 2008. Following this recession, many Americans lost their economic stability, their jobs, and their homes. After the recession, it's understandable people turned to superhero films as a way to escape their gloomy lives. Viewers can always count on superhero films to have clear differences between good and evil, to always let the good guys triumph over the bad, and to make sure superheroes are always there to make people's lives a little less bleak. After looking at it from that angle, I grew a different type of appreciation for the superhero genre. Some may say those stories still need to be told because it offers people a form of escapism that gets them out of their tedious day-to-day lives. But I think that argument is missing the point. Superhero stories are still offering people a way to escape the problems people in the US had during the recession of 2008. And maybe these stories would still work if the United States continued to be in a recession, but fortunately, that isn't the case. In fact, Bloomberg Business claims that in many ways the United States is better off economically than it has been in 16 years. I think it's important to realize, however, that this doesn't mean superhero stories are irrelevant. I think superheroes and their stories can save us from more than just dealing with economic hard times, and I think the United States might need superhero stories now more than ever. Just different kinds of superhero stories. Stories we haven't seen before. At a time where we can't go a day without hearing about new sexual abuse cases or race-related hate crimes, I think the best way to continue the superhero genre's longevity would be to showcase heroes that represent the causes we need supported right now in the present day. Superheroes that empower women of all ages and teach society that it is not acceptable to demean women in any way, shape, or form. Superhero stories that destroy the idea that leaders are always white men and prove to audiences that the United States should be a place where many cultures can thrive, and any form of hate should be put out immediately. And this is an idea many people share. People want these diverse stories now. This can be seen by looking at how popular DC's Wonder Woman was in theaters. In fact, Box Office Mojo claims that Wonder Woman was the 5th most successful superhero movie of all time. This is also obvious by how much hype the internet has built around Marvel's soon-to-be-released Black Panther. It's clear after looking at these examples that I'm not the only person tired of the superhero movies' recycled characters and storylines. I think it's more important than ever before to change the superhero genre's approach to storytelling. While the field has definitely made progress, if its creators have any intention on writing out the superhero craze for all it's worth, they have no other choice but to give the superhero universe a more inclusive story for all people.